Hey, what's going on today, guys? It's Trey. Welcome back to the channel. As always, welcome back to sunny, beautiful Germany. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my first experience visiting a German hospital. Now, I'm sure some of you guys remember my video in the past that I made about my first experience at a German doctor. This one's going to be completely different because that doctor was actually a private practice. In this video, we're going to be talking about the time that I actually went to a German hospital. Now, for some of you guys that are wondering, no, I didn't just randomly decide to go to a hospital. I ended up messing up my back lifting a bed here in our home, and it really put me out of commission. This happened right before our trip to Paris. And so I decided to schedule a trip to the hospital because I was in excruciating pain. So before we get too deep into the video, I think it's very important for me to mention a few important details to you guys. So first things first, my name is Trey. I'm an American living here in Stuttgart, Germany, under something called SOFA status. So I'm not a German citizen. We are simply Americans that are allowed to live here thanks in part to the German government as well as the US government. Second thing that I wanted to mention is that our health insurance is actually American private health insurance. So it's very different from the health insurance here in Germany. And yes, there is some private health insurance in Germany, but for the most part in the US, I'd say 99.9999999% of health insurance is private. And so I wanted to provide some clarification with you guys. And I think that that's something that's really important to mention. All right, so I am gonna talk to you guys about the entire process, like calling, setting up an appointment, getting there, intake. We're gonna talk about everything that I experienced at this German hospital. So Monday morning came, I was in immense pain. I decided to call Marian Hospital, which is a very large hospital here in Stuttgart. And the very first thing that I told them, when they could probably tell by my accent, was that I'm an American and I have private health insurance. Now, when you tell health providers here in Germany that you have private health insurance, especially American private health insurance, they just literally do a complete 180, right? Their eyeballs just like completely blow up, and you start seeing like euro signs and dollar signs in their eyeballs, and they get really excited to help you. Now, obviously that's not right? And a lot of people that live here in Germany don't have that American private health insurance, obviously. And the American insurance companies, they obviously pay these companies pretty quickly, and then they pay them a lot as well. So that's why it's typically a little bit easier to get seen quicker or to get efficient healthcare in Germany as an American with private health insurance. Now, before we moved here, I was very intimidated. I didn't really know how it would be living here in Germany. Unfortunately, I have a ton of health ailments. So before we moved here, I decided to look up ear, nose, and throat doctors. I decided to look up chiropractors. You know, I wanted to see and make sure that I knew what we were getting ourselves into. And I had an idea of the care that I could potentially be receiving in Germany. I just wanted to not stress myself out in the event that I broke a bone, I had some sort of issue or ailment going on. I wanted to have a list of clinicians that I could visit without having to waste time searching for all of these different doctors. So I called the doctor. They were able to get me in the next day. Now, that is probably something that doesn't happen too often here in Germany, and especially coming from the US, you really won't get seen by a doctor the next day, typically because there's a lot of people that have appointments already. But like I said, since I did come in with that American private health insurance, they just saw dollar signs, euro signs, and they got me in as quickly as possible. So set my appointment. Everybody was very nice. My German isn't the best, so typically like probably halfway through the conversation, we end up switching over to English. For the most part, the appointment process was super simple. So the hospital is only a 10-minute drive from where I live. So I drove into the hospital on Tuesday, and I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty intimidated. One, because I had to pay to park. Now, like I said, I'm no stranger to hospitals. My dad works in radiology, so I've been in and out of hospitals my entire life. I've had tons and tons of injuries, sadly. So I've been to hospitals. Like, I've been to hospitals all over the state of Florida, which is where I'm from. And yeah, I was pretty surprised that like I had to grab a ticket to pay. But anyway, we'll get more into that later. So I parked my car, I get into the hospital, and I actually made a really huge mistake, and I ended up paying the price for it. So I'm in the hospital walking around, and I noticed that everybody's wearing a mask, right? Obviously, COVID is still very much a big issue here in Germany, but I'm walking around, I don't have a mask on. This was my own personal ignorance, but people were giving me the meanest, dirtiest looks that I've ever received here in Germany. They were like pointing at me. They were giving me the classic German, no, 99999. And it just so happens I ended up getting a little bit deeper into the hospital, and I was walking past these surgeons, And one of the surgeons actually came up to me, gave me the 99999, pointed at his mask and told me that I needed to leave the hospital and get a mask. Now, I tried to ask him, hey, is there a way that I can buy a mask? Is there a way that you could give me a mask? And honestly, he just ignored me, which I thought was kind of messed up because honestly, I didn't have a mask and I haven't worn a mask here in Germany for a while. So huge mistake on my part. I ended up having to walk down to the information desk, and even they were actually trying to charge me for a mask. So I ended up getting a mask, and I ended up getting to the radiology department. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting because I did have an appointment. So I let the lady at the front desk know that, hey, I have an appointment at 9 a.m. My name is Trey. I have an appointment. You know, this is what's wrong with me. You know, here's my information. Here's my SOFA status. Here's everything that I need. I always make sure that I come prepared to make sure that everything is as streamlined as possible. And plus, you know, my father has worked in healthcare for years, so I always know the importance of coming and being prepared. Now, at this point, even though I'm as prepared as I could be and probably more prepared than your average individual, the first lady that I interacted with, she honestly looked at me like I had tentacles, right? She didn't see any of my information at all. And she told me, hey, you know, thank you for coming, but I'm gonna have to send you to this counter over here, 500 meters down the hallway. So I ended up going to that counter. Got to that counter, they, you know, were typing, just literally typing, not doing too much speaking, not doing too much interacting with me, but trying to find my appointment. So they ended up finding my appointment, and then the lady informed me that I needed to go to another desk, which was another 200 meters down the hallway. So finally I got to that desk, and this lady could not find any information on me at all whatsoever. And so instead of sending me to another desk, she actually decided to send me to a hospital administrator. I don't remember what her title was specifically, but I could tell she was definitely a bigwig at the hospital. One, because she had her own desk, but also her office was very far away from the little counters and from the waiting rooms and whatnot. So keep in mind, at this point, I was kind of starting to get the runaround, right? Because I went from this desk to this desk to this desk. Now I'm in this lady's office. But luckily, everybody was really nice for the most part, which is what I really appreciated. And then this final lady that I ended up interacting with was amazing. So she got all my information. I showed her my US passport. You know, I informed her about the conversation that I had with the individuals. And she told me, she actually apologized to me, which completely blew my mind. She apologized for all the bouncing around. And she told me, hey, you know, Mr. Gonzalez, this is how we do it here. She told me that she was appalled at the fact that I got bounced around because you could tell that she wants things to be as streamlined as possible. And for a lot of you guys that know, you know, healthcare is pretty complex for the most part. And it can be pretty difficult, especially from an administration standpoint. And so I really appreciated the fact that she took pride in her position and took pride in her job, but also in the fact that she took pride in the clients as well. So I really appreciated that. If you're watching this video, thank you so much. I obviously can't say her name, but thank you. You were really amazing. So after this, we were able to get me in to get some x-rays and an MRI done on my back. Now, before that, I actually ended up having to sit in the weight room. Now, this was the really shocking part. So keep in mind, this is about 9:30, 9:45 a.m. on a Tuesday. Guys, this waiting room was busy. This looked like a waiting room that you would see at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles or Jackson Memorial in Miami, which those are some of the largest hospitals in the US, right? This waiting room was a complete madhouse. Now, I obviously don't know what people were there for, but there were hundreds of people in this waiting room. And this was a very large waiting room, right? So that was pretty shocking to see. But in my mind, I'm thinking like, man, I'm gonna be waiting here for hours, right? You know, how long is this gonna take? I'm really intimidated at this point. But on the bright side, I only ended up having to wait like 15 to 20 minutes. Now I will say, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was coming in with the American private insurance, and it just really helped to streamline everything. So I'd be interested to see if I didn't have that American private insurance, how long I would have been waiting. But I can just tell by some of the looks on the people waiting in the waiting room, they look like they were there for a while. And keep in mind, this is one of the largest hospitals in Stuttgart, so they're open 24/7, right? So some of these people were probably there from like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. They were there for a while and they did not look happy, but I only had to wait like 15 to 20 minutes. So they ended up taking me back into sort of like a triage room, which is where I had to take my shoes off. I had to remove some garments of clothing. And they just asked me some basic questions, you know, Mr. Gonzalez, how are you feeling? you know, what's your age? What do you do for work? Do you stand a lot? Do you sit a lot? You know, are you active? Do you smoke? Do you drink? They're just asking me some really in-depth questions, which is what I'm used to coming from the US. These are like the basic questions that you ask a patient when intaking them, when getting information about them. And so they wanted to see what I do on a daily basis and how this injury could have occurred. You know, they ended up making me do stretches, and they ended up, you know, seeing like my level of motion. And basically they ended up just telling me that, hey, you know what, Mr. Gonzalez, we can tell that you're in some pain. You've already told us that you have a high pain tolerance and a very high pain threshold. And yeah, judging by some of the faces that you're making, we can tell that you're in a lot of pain. So what we're gonna do next is we are gonna get you in for the x-rays and the MRI. And so that's what happened next. And by the way, like I said, my German isn't the best. Something that I did really appreciate, which it shouldn't be this way because I'm in Germany, right? I would expect people to speak German, but I really appreciated the fact that they spoke in English, right? Because that was probably the thing that I was the most intimidated about, is my German isn't the strongest. And especially when it comes to medicine and healthcare, like my German is just horrible in that regard. So I can have a basic conversation, like I can have a basic conversation at a grocery store, but when we're talking about like joints care and we're talking about, you know, my health per se and body parts, you know, that's still something that I'm working on. But I really did appreciate the fact that they spoke English to me. And so I ended up going to another waiting room. This was in a completely different wing in the hospital. This one didn't have as many people, but there still was a wait. And as some of you guys know, like MRIs, they aren't quick, right? They take anywhere between 20 minutes to 35 minutes. And depending on the severity of an injury, or, you know, depending on where the body part is specifically, they could take in excess of an hour. Now, you have to remember, an MRI, you know, if you're claustrophobic, you might want to avoid it. But sometimes, you know, they have to sedate people. Sometimes you need to have an MRI done to discover the severity of an injury. And so, like I said, my dad has worked in radiology my entire life personally. He's been doing it for, you know, 30 years plus. Me personally, I knew what I was getting myself into. But for the most part, like, an MRI machine is a very tiny tube that they stick people inside of, and you can't wear metal. And like, if you have facial piercings or anything like that, even if you have some like, even if you've had like surgery to implant metal, you have to disclose that information to the physician, right? Because you'll look up, and an MRI is essentially a huge magnet. And so things will fly off of you. Earrings will fly off of you. Like, you can end up being in a lot of pain. So I just wanted to explain to you guys kind of how an MRI worked. So ended up getting the MRI done. Quick disclaimer, this part kind of threw me off because, like I said, I've had MRIs my entire life. Like, I've had them on my knees, you know, I've had them all over, right? I've played sports growing up. I played sports in college. I've broken my nose. Like, I've had all different types of injuries. One thing that did throw me off was, I don't know, I really don't understand why, but the MRI tech actually made me remove my pants. And he didn't just make me remove my pants, he made me remove my underwear as well. So the MRI took about maybe like 30 minutes tops. You know, obviously the back is a pretty large area. The spine is a pretty large surface area in the body. So at this point, it's about 10:30. I've been at the hospital for a pretty long time, right? You know, I personally don't like hospitals for the most part. They kind of make me uncomfortable, even though my dad has worked in them my entire life. But yeah, I was there for an hour. I was there for an hour and a half. So after getting my MRI done, I actually ended up going back into that really large, expansive waiting room where all the people that were waiting were. And this was actually the longest wait that I ended up having. So I ended up having to wait about 45 minutes to an hour because the doctor that I was meeting with, he actually had an emergency surgery to do. So he, you know, was obviously very occupied. He had to help somebody out. And the thing that I really appreciated was the lady at the front desk. She ended up telling me that, hey, like, the doctor's in surgery. Here's how long you're gonna have to wait. And that's exactly how long it was, right? She could have easily just said, hey, like, go wait over there. We'll call you when you're ready, right? I really appreciated the transparency and honesty because obviously, like, people have things to do, right? I have a son, right? I got errands to run, you know, I got stuff to do. And so I really valued and appreciated that transparency. So after like the 45-minute to an hour wait, I ended up seeing the doctor and he went over my results with me. Now, this is pretty shocking, right? Because whenever I've gone to a doctor and it's a pretty serious injury, typically you have to wait like at least 24 hours to hear the results. And I think that's because they want the doctor or the physician to actually study over the injury to make sure that everything is fine. And if there is something wrong, they want to be able to pinpoint it specifically. But in this instance, they were actually able to read my results within like an hour. So I was pretty stunned by this. The good news, my back is fine for the most part. They just told me that there is some, swelling and whatnot in my spine, and I need to just kind of take it easy for the next week or so, which is kind of tough for me because I'm a runner, right? So I run anywhere from 8 kilometers to 12 kilometers a day, right? That's my thing. That's what makes me happy. And I run with my son as well, pushing him in a jogging stroller. So obviously the back is something that I use a lot when I run. And it just kind of sucks that I've been out for, it feels like I've been out for a while, but I can't wait to get back running. But I'm just happy that my back isn't too bad. So at this point, they went ahead and prescribed me some medication. And since I mentioned earlier on in the interaction that my pain tolerance and pain ceiling is really high, they went ahead and prescribed me, I think like 600 milligram ibuprofen, which I'm not gonna lie, guys, like when I had my broken nose and like when I had my knee surgeries, dude, I would have to take like 2 1,000 milligram ibuprofen and I would still be in immense pain. So these 600 milligram ibuprofen, unfortunately, are like Skittles, but I think 600 was the max that they could provide me. I kind of wish they would have gave me the 1,000 milligram, but it is what it is. I'm not gonna fight it. I was just happy to get some relief. So at this point in the experience, I ended up having to go back up to the front counter and make an appointment with the secretary. So the secretary went ahead and she gave me like a list of dates and times, and she told me, hey, we can get you in here, we can get you in there. And now in this instance, the doctor actually told me that he would like to see me in 7 days. So I have an appointment on Tuesday with the doctor, so we'll see how that goes. But basically it's just a follow-up. It's not anything too crazy. And I'm not gonna lie, I think they wanted to get me in as quickly as possible because, like I said, that American health insurance, that's easy money for these guys. So they wanted to get me in as quickly as possible. And yeah, that was pretty much my experience. Now, the absolute worst part of the visit for me was leaving the hospital. So at this point, I had been at the hospital for like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I was there for a while, right? And so I get down to the parking and it ended up costing 10 euro to park there. For me, whatever, 10 euro, you gotta pay the price sometimes. The American in me is just like, bruh, 10 euro to park at the hospital? Like, I can go to Jackson Memorial in Miami, spend the entire day there, and the parking is free. They don't even have an option to pay. When I've been to Cedars-Sinai in LA, the parking there is free. The only time I've had to pay for parking in the US was actually in Honolulu, and I get why that is, right? It's a small island. There's not too many hospital systems, so I get why they charge to park there. But the American in me was a little bit hurt by having to even pay 1 cent to park. It's absurd. And yeah, that was the worst thing that happened to me at the hospital. So I'm gonna give German hospitals a seal of approval. Obviously, it was a pretty quick process, right? So when I'm used to dealing with hospitals, especially when I was in Hawaii, dude, the hospital systems there, they take a while. And so what I want to do in this next part of the video is actually, I want to talk about American hospitals. I want to talk about some of the experiences that I've had in those hospitals. Like I said, we just moved from Hawaii in February. I've been to Queens Medical Center, which is the largest hospital system in the state of Hawaii. And I've also been to Straub, which is the second largest hospital in Hawaii, the second largest hospital on the island of Oahu. Guys, I had horrible experiences. Back in 2020, I ended up going to the hospital one night because I just had some immense pain in my stomach. And so I ended up having to go to the hospital, and I ended up being diagnosed with a disease called sphincter of Oddi dysfunction. So it's a disease that I live with daily. It's very debilitating. I think there's only like 0.01% of people on the planet that have it. I hate it. Everybody's got a sob story. I don't want to get too much into mine, but it is a disease that I live with. And so I ended up having to go to Straub twice. I had 2 episodes, and it was just a nightmare each time. And so I want to do an entire video on that experience, but I just did not have a good experience. And looking at this experience that I've had in a German hospital versus that experience, it's completely night and day, right? And so the biggest thing that I noticed is just the level of care that people give you. And you know, I'm American, right? So I speak English, and even when I speak German, I have an accent. And so you would think that people would be kind of put off to that, but I never really experienced that at all here in Germany. People were just ready to help, right? And so the reason why I think that the level of care is a little bit better here in Germany is because the people genuinely care. You know, when they're looking at my paperwork, right, they're not saying American with American health insurance. They're just seeing my name, you know, they're seeing what I'm in for, and then they're ready to help you, right? They don't see like, oh, this guy drives a BMW, you know, this guy lives in a 4-room house. They're not seeing any of that, right? They're just there to help you. And so I can't say this enough, man, like I really felt valued there. You know, even though there was a language barrier for the most part, it was just nice to actually feel like people wanted to help you. You know, very different from what I experienced in Hawaii. And, you know, spoiler alert, because like I said, I am going to do an entire video on this. I ended up spending my first visit, because I had 2 visits, right? So my first visit back in 2020, I ended up going to Straub, and my hospital visit, I was there for 5 days. My hospital bill ended up being like $180,000, right? And like I said, we're gonna do a whole video on that. We're gonna break down that pricing in a later video. The pricing was the icing on the absolutely horrible cake that I had at Straub. The experience was a complete nightmare through and through, from beginning to end, a disaster for the most part. And so I'm not the biggest fan of American hospitals personally. Now, to avoid like any billing issues or anything like that, I did ask the ladies at the front desk if I could just go ahead and pay now, like to get everything out of the way. Like, let's forget about having to send this bill, send that bill. Like, tell me what I gotta pay now. I'll pay it. I'll deal with my American insurance on my own. I'll get the reimbursement. Don't worry about that. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is. Maybe there's some sort of law in Germany where they actually have to speak to the American insurance company. Whenever I try to pay on the spot, the physicians, they don't want the money right then and there, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they want to make sure that their billing is correct, and they want to make sure that they're able to get as money as possible, which, look, I totally understand that. I totally respect that. And but it's weird. My wife, when she went to her OB appointment, they let her pay right then and there, which I thought was awesome, right? Because you don't have to worry about billing, you don't have to worry about paperwork, you don't have to worry about anything. You're paid in full, and that's it. And then you can worry about the insurance company later. That's how I am personally. That's what I like. That's what I like to do. I hate receiving shit in the mail. I haven't got my bill yet. I'll probably do a follow-up video to this to let you guys know how much I ended up paying, but I really don't expect it to be that much. And also I get 100% reimbursement from my insurance company. So this entire visit was free. Is it gonna be free for most Germans? I personally don't know. Please let me know in the comments section below what something like an MRI would cost, or something like a CT, CAT scan, X-ray. Let me know how much those things typically cost, if they cost anything in Germany, because I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I have no clue or idea whatsoever. So like I said, my German hospital visit was really seamless. The things that I really appreciated, once again, I appreciated the fact that everything was quick. I appreciated the transparency, and also I just really appreciated the fact that they showed me care, right? They treated me as a human being. They didn't treat me as a number. They didn't see me as a dollar sign. Like I said, as always, in Germany, they value people. In the US, they value corporations and the dollar. And I don't agree with that. And I'll always be pro people versus pro company or pro organization. And so, you know, I feel like in Germany, that's the concept for the most part. And I'm sure some people are gonna be like, Trey, man, you have no idea. You haven't been here in Germany that long. Blah, 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 blah. But look, as an American that has been here for some time, I can tell you out the gate that Germany does value people for the most part. And so I love being here. Like I've said time and time again, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I will always tell people, if you're looking for a nice little escape from the US, check out Germany. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing country. There's so many opportunities. There's so many things to do. We live here in Stuttgart, which is only an hour and a half from France. We're an hour and a half from Austria, an hour and a half from the Swiss border. Like, Munich is only 2 hours away. Frankfurt is only an hour train ride. You know, we're going to Turkey next month. I couldn't think of a better place to live in Europe. We are literally smack dab in the heart of Europe, and I love it so much, you know. So as always, if you guys have any questions for me, please leave them down in the comments section below. I'm also gonna link my Instagram, which Guys, thank you so much for hitting me up. I almost feel like I need a publicist because I get so many messages on a daily basis. I know I haven't gotten back to all of you, but just know that I will get back to you in a timely manner. Thank you for reaching out to me. But yes, thank you guys for the continued love and support. And as always, thank you. Mahalo for watching.